Good evening. Welcome to this demonstration of self-loading cargo version 1.6. Now, the first thing I want to do is address the elephant in the room, which is obviously the release date. Now, it's the 26th of June 2023, and the aim is to get this to you by the end of June. If not the end of June, it'll be very early in July. We're just tidying up the very last stages of the application. There aren't any major show-stopping issues to stop it from going live to you. There's a couple of bits of documentation that I need to write up and a couple of demonstration videos that I would like to have in place ready for the launch, just to help people get to grips with how it works. But I'm going to show you sort of a brief overview of the basics of how the application works in this new format, because if you notice, we no longer have the big black rectangular window. We have a new interface. And the reason for this interface is to make you concentrate on what is the most important part of self-loading cargo, and that is the interaction between yourself and the different communication channels, I guess, on the aircraft with the ground crew and the cabin crew, as well as the passengers, without all of the sort of the unnecessary fluff being in your face all the time, unless you wanted to, of course. But your primary interface is this main button here, with a button to allow the communication with all the individual channels, and we'll get to that in a minute. Now, secondary to that is a toolbar which you can access simply by clicking on the button, and it expands out with all of the sort of the secondary functionality of the application, like the cabin layout view, the in-flight services, etc. The primary focus of the app is to have the communication facility there for you, and otherwise self-loading cargo sort of stays out the way. You can resize the window and toolbar and stuff to kind of make it go out the way even more. You can make it transparent in settings as well, but I'm going to keep it at a decent size so you can actually see what's going on. So the first thing to do really is to explain what should we do. Should we go through the individual I'll go through the individual windows briefly before we actually get started. So the very first thing that we've got is, like I say, the main communication panel with the communication button, and then the first button on the toolbar is a progress window, so you can sort of view a high-level overview of the current status of your flight, and each one of these individual buttons here allows you to drill down a little bit further. So the idea is that if you want this window open, you can see what's going on. You can. If you don't, you can just leave self-loading cargo in this nice little format here, and then see how you did after the flight, to give yourself a little bit more of a challenge, rather than having information in your face at all times. And let's face it, real estate, when you're using the sim, is a premium, especially if you've only got one screen, and it's nice to be able to fly the plane without the distraction of loads of flashing information all over the place. So the option is yours. You can have this open if you like, as well as all the other windows, and you can reposition them on your different monitors if you've got them. You can resize them to suit, you can drag them wherever you want them, or you can just simply close them down. This window here, flight information window, the progress window, so we can see we've got 115 passengers expected. We are currently in pre-flight. This layout changes slightly depending on which phase of flight you're in, because obviously none of this is relevant when you're actually flying. It will change to whether you're on time or you're running late while you're in flight. So we've got 115 passengers that checked in up here. They were expected, and then 115 checked in. Boarding completed 9 minutes ago. The loading completed, and we were supposed to depart 8 minutes ago, so we're slightly delayed, which basically also shows in the trend. That's the satisfaction trend of the passengers. They're having a slightly negative experience because we're delayed, and the most pressing need of the passengers, that you can see now, is obviously the departure delay. Now, I wanted this in place because there's a new scoring system in self-loading cargo. In fact, there's two ways to score in self-loading cargo version 1.6. One is your pilot score, which is how you're basically graded on all aspects of the flight, from sort of pushback to the actual flight, your punctuality, the way you flew the aircraft, etc., but also the overall experience of the passengers. Now, I got rid of the 0 to 100% metric because it's a little bit, well, let's be honest, it's a bit rubbish. I mean, what's the difference between someone who's 96 and 97% satisfied? It's just a it's a terrible metric, basically. and it doesn't really mean anything. So I decided to give you sort of a more a higher level experience rating. It ranges from terrible flight to excellent flight, if you will, rather than that sort of 0 to 100% nonsense. But the way that score is calculated, I'll go into in a little bit more detail. But for a high level overview, that's what you get. You see the overall experience of all of the passengers on this flight progress window. So anytime you're wondering what's going on, just load this window up. And I'm currently in the Phoenix A320, and it's dinging at me for some reason. Probably because I don't have a flight plan or anything plugged in. We're just basically going to do a departure. Well, not a departure. I'm just going to get you to the runway. But yeah, this is a really high-level overview of what's going on with the flight. And if you want to go into any more detail, you can click through and see the notifications from the passengers. So right now they're showing a delayed departure. This might show that the Wi-Fi is terrible or turbulences are happening, etc., etc. But the only thing happening right now is the delayed departure affecting the passengers. The ground crew, they are currently waiting for the beacon light to switch on, and once it does, they will start the dialogue to start pushback with us. We can see the aircraft is fueled, the ground crew is connected to the comms, we have a link to them. We could call them up in a second, which I will do, and we can see how many items were loaded into the aircraft and the fact that loading is complete. So again, this is a more detailed look at this part here, this aircraft loading section. This is the high level part, this is more detail. Now medical issues, these are not implemented yet, they're coming in version 1.7, which will be, there'll be a new segment on the roadmap. Well, in fact the medical issues is actually already on the roadmap, but I'll put some more detail on there just so you can see exactly what is going to come. But hopefully you'll see throughout this demo how it's going to work and how it's going to integrate into the whole dialogue between you, cabin crew, and the passengers. But that's coming in version 1.7, so it's irrelevant for this demo. The cabin crew report, they're just basically there. They said they've received the load sheet from ground, and they are waiting for our next move, which would be to push back. So that concludes that flight information window. Again, that is on that's the first button on the toolbar there. You can see it's open because it's got a white border around it. If I close it, the border disappears, so you can see which window's open and which isn't. But the next window is the doors, the door management window. Now, self-loading cargo, it has its own simulation of the cabin doors, and it's based on the cabin layout that you choose when you start your flight. Now, on this particular aircraft, we have 4 doors, as you can see, door 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. It is capable of tying to the FSU IPC data within the simulator. However, as you may be aware, in Microsoft Flight Simulator, FSU IPC is unable to manipulate the doors. It can provide information to third-party applications like self-loading cargo that the doors have been opened or closed, and they can react to it. But you cannot actually toggle the status of a door. So what I've had to do is I've had to allow the ability to disconnect the doors from the simulator. Right now we're disconnected, and as you can see, we're in a mode where cabin crew manage the doors. So any commands that the cabin crew get given by me, the pilot, they will react and they'll automatically manage the simulation of the doors, and there's no way for the simulator to know the status of the self-loading cargo door. The 3D model won't have any effect either. If you open a door within self-loading cargo, the door won't open on the aircraft because there's no way to do that. So this is basically a simulation of doors that is detached from the simulator. It's self-loading cargo's own. However, if I synchronize it, it goes into jetway mode. Now, if I connect the jetway, self-loading cargo will react to the jetway connecting. So let's open a door quickly. Now, when the jetway connects, self-loading cargo will react, and you'll see the door icon start flashing. It won't open it immediately because the cabin crew need to make their way around the cabin layout or in the back to actually manipulate the door and open the door. So let's get this going to show you what I mean. Toggle the jetway. So what you'll see is the jetway connecting. The door hasn't started flashing yet, but when it attaches it will. There we go. So now there'll be a member of the cabin crew. If I open the cabin layout window, there's a person coming towards the door, and when she gets there she will open the door. Right now it is in closed disarmed status, as signified by the orange. There are 3 states: open, closed disarmed, and closed armed. Closed armed. So there we go. That door's open. Now, if I was to disconnect the jetway, it's not brilliant. It's because the jetway will disappear and the door will be marked for activity by the cabin crew. However, the jetway disappears and the door is still open, and that's because the cabin crew hadn't arrived yet. I'll try to work on improving that, but you get the general idea that obviously SLC is just reacting to the status of the doors. If you turn off synchronize, I could ask them to open the doors. I could manually specify that I want a door open by clicking on this mode here. Again, that doesn't physically open the door, it just assigns a cabin crew member to a door to open it. And again, if I want it closed, I have to wait for someone to arrive. There is some intelligence when selecting the cabin crew member. It's the closest member to that particular door that will open the door. So that's basically how it works. You have full control either in manual mode. You can have the cabin crew reacting to the doors or obeying commands as to whether the doors should be open or closed, or you can put it into synchronized mode so that the jetway controls the doors. And if you don't want this window open, say for instance if you're taxiing to the terminal and you see that there's a jetway available, you can simply middle click to cycle through the different modes to disconnect the simulator from the door. So when you arrive at the gate, you're in the correct mode for the gate that you're going to be attaching to. You either put it into jetway mode or just stick it into cabin crew mode, and they'll deal with the doors. Unless you want to do it yourself, click in manual mode. It is explained in the manual, so if you get stuck, look at the manual. But once you get used to it, it's quite easy. When we push back, the cabin crew will actually arm these doors, and then you'll be unable to control them manually, because at the end of the day you're sat in the cockpit and you don't have any controls over the doors really, as it should be. So that's the door window. Next is the seatbelt sign. You can either click it on, or in some aircraft, and this one works, you can use the switch, and if you watch it, it goes green. And if we pull up the flight progress window, we can see, oh, they're having a bad flight now because we're very late, but you can see that they're not secured. We've got 115 on board, we've got 115 seated, but they're not secured. So let's get them belted up. There we go. So they're starting to get secured, and the belt sign has come on. The next window is InFlight Services, and again it's quite similar to the old interface, however it is put on its own window, and the reason for that is again to kind of keep it out of the way if you don't want to see what's going on. I mean, right now it's fully automated mode, so we don't really need to see what's going on, but if you wanted to control the services, you can. If you see this green circle next to the icon, that says that it's in automated mode, but if I right click the icon, I can put it into manual mode, and then that gives me full control over these buttons here. Now obviously they're grayed out because I'm on the ground. We can't make any services while we're on the ground, but if we were in the air, as long as there was a service available, because now you have to actually choose how many services are on board the aircraft and when they get served, as long as there was one available, you could manually start it. Otherwise, put in automatic mode and the services will automatically be pre-announced and started for you. So that's the in-flight services. As you can see, we've got different services. We've got hot food, we've got hot drinks, hot food, we've got alcohol, we have duty free, and we have the in-flight movie. In-flight movie can also it can be. We've got Wi-Fi as well as a movie, whereas in the previous version it was one or the other. I'll get into that in a second. The music, you can either put it in automatic mode, so that the cabin crew control the music when passengers are starting to come on board and after landing, etc., etc., or you can control it manually. I've got it turned off for the purposes of this demo, but you can just select a button and the music will start to play, and obviously you can control the volume from here as well. You can actually ask the cabin crew to turn the music on and off and turn the music up and down as well, the volume up and down, but again, you can control it by the interface if you find it easier. Aircraft toilets. As you can see, we've got 3 toilets on board here, and that corresponds to the cabin layout. We've got 1 there, and we've got 2 at the back. Now, which one's that? That's toilet 0. So they're in automated mode here at the moment. If I again right click the icon to put it into manual mode, I can then control the toilet whether it is locked or unlocked using this slider. So you can see it's gone green on there, so someone can use it, but I tend to just leave it into automatic mode. Tripping over my words here. I leave it in automatic mode, which basically means that after takeoff, the cabin crew will automatically open the toilets for use for the passengers, and when we're on approach, they'll be locked, so passengers can't hide in the toilets. Again, there are 3 states to the toilets. They are locked, engaged, and available. And if someone is in the toilet and you put it into manual mode, you can't actually lock the toilet until someone leaves. So that, again, that's something that's going to become more apparent during the emergency processes, because you'll be able to have people smoking in the toilets, for instance. But we'll get into that in the version 1.7 update. So yeah, that's our aircraft toilets, managed by the crew or managed by yourself. Wi-Fi. So when you're starting your flight, you get the option of, well, you don't have to have Wi-Fi on board, but if you do, there are 3 different types to select from. One is a ground-to-air Wi-Fi, and the other 2 are satellite. Now, the ground-to-air Wi-Fi is interesting because it has lower bandwidth than the others, but it is also limited to you being over ground. If you head across an ocean, the signal will actually degrade, so the Wi-Fi availability will get worse and worse in terms of the internet on board, until you go over a ground where there might be a cell tower, in which case the signal will be restored. So you've got to choose. If you're doing sort of a European flight, you'll be fine, because obviously you're not going to go over the ocean. But if you were doing a transatlantic flight, then obviously you would want to choose one of the satellite Wi-Fis. The different satellite Wi-Fis, I forget offhand, I haven't got the documentation in front of me, but it is in the manual. I think it's KA band and KU band. We have KU here. I can't remember which one is which, but one has the higher bandwidth and one has a slightly lower bandwidth, but one is more susceptible to the weather, and self-loading cargo actually simulates the signal attenuation. If there's bad weather, then the potential for the signal to drop out is worse, and therefore that will impact the satisfaction of any passengers using the Wi-Fi. So it's important it doesn't have a massive effect on the passenger satisfaction, but it is there and it is simulated. And as you can see right now, the bandwidth monitor is in progress. We've currently got, let's say, 20 megabytes per second bandwidth for the whole aircraft. There are 91 connections to the access points, 25 people downloading out of those 91 connections. So because we have, say, 20 meg bandwidth with 20 downloads at a time, we have about a meg per passenger. So they should be having a reasonable connection. If the bandwidth drops and the connections go up and the number of people trying to download something goes up all at the same time, then obviously they'll have a poor experience, and that's simulated for anyone who is connected to the Wi-Fi. The Wi-Fi does get disconnected during takeoff and landing and any announcements by the crew, like the safety announcement, and if someone is busy trying to do something at that time, they might get a little bit frustrated as well. So the next thing is the cabin lighting controls. Now, if we look at the the cabin lights, we've got emergency lights. As you can see, the aisles, they're lit up in turquoise, and obviously the seats, we can see them as well. I'm going to adjust this before I release it because the overhead lighting isn't brilliantly apparent when I switch it off, but you can, again, it's in automated mode, so the cabin crew control it, but if I put it into manual mode, I can actually control the different zones, like the floor lighting. These zones are generated automatically based on the aircraft layout. So you can see if I I'll turn the emergency lights off in the front of the aircraft in zone 1. So you see the lights have gone out. Now, this is important that the lighting is set correctly for each stage of the flight, especially at night. You want to have the emergency lights up and running and the overhead lights turned off for safety purposes, and you are graded on that. But it's quite easy to get it correct, because if you put it into automatic mode, the cabin crew know how the lights are supposed to be simulated, and they will put the lights to be the correct state if you put it back into automatic mode. I'm just going to see if you can actually see, if you look at the back of the aircraft, if I turn the overhead lights off, you should see them dim slightly. Like I say, it's not a brilliant representation on that. In fact, let me make this window a little bit bigger. You might be able to see a little bit better now. There are 3 states: off, dimmed and full for each. Did you see them? Did you see them move? Oh, did you see them highlight and then go off? Yeah, maybe you did. I'm concentrating on the switch. But yeah, so these are currently in an incorrect state. So if I put that back into into automated mode, you can see the purser is actually heading to the intercom where the control panel is, and she will actually turn the lights to the correct state once she arrives at the control panel, which is nice. And you watch the switches and the light on the actual cabin layout, and you'll see them go back to the correct setting. There we go. So the aircraft's back to how it should be, and you're not losing any points on your pilot score. So that is the cabin management window. We can either close it or we can toggle the icon. And the next one obviously is the cabin layout itself with all of the different passengers. So as you can see, we're in an A320. In this particular layout, we obviously have 3 toilets, which we went through before. We have the different classes for the seats, and obviously the passengers sitting in them. We have an intercom at the front, we have an intercom at the back. Now, depending on where the purser is, whenever we try to communicate with her, she will need to walk to the nearest intercom, and it will continue ringing until she gets there. So it's a little bit dynamic in that she actually has to traverse the length of the aircraft to be able to talk to you. So if there's an emergency, then obviously it takes a little bit more time than you might like to be able to get in touch with the purser. We have kitchen areas, we have the doors representation here. Again, they're in orange because they're disarmed. They're closed, but they're disarmed. We have the cockpit area, and we have the different aisles. And as you can see, the cabin crew are walking around the aircraft and doing their thing, waiting for us to take off. However, we can actually click on any of the passengers to see more details about them, and as you can see, it is actually quite detailed in what they're doing. I've tried to make it so that you can see exactly what's going on with the passengers rather than having to guess. So you might actually be able to decide how to manipulate the passenger to improve their satisfaction, because now you can actually see what's going on and what they're thinking. So when they first came on, you can see they were on time. Then it started to get a bit delayed, and then it started to well, we've been sat here for a while, put it that way. So they're starting to react. They're having this person's having a bad flight. However, this bad flight rating for the individual passenger is not just generated by their stats anymore. It's actually generated based on the rating for that particular passenger, in terms of lots of different areas of the flight. And you can see that by clicking on the ratings tab. So we have how good is the flight in terms of the punctuality. Well, as you can see, it's gone into the negative. The comms and information, well, we haven't told them why we're late, so that's in the negative as well. The flight comfort, we haven't started. Personal comfort, InFlight Services, we haven't had any of those. There's no entertainment at the moment, so it's hard for them to judge. They do have Wi-Fi, and this person's listening to music. And the cabin crew service, there hasn't been anywhere. Sorry, there hasn't been any. This is actually a proportional scale, so because we're so far gone in terms of the flight punctuality, these will take some time to register. And to demonstrate that, it should be something to do with cabin crew service. If I actually request the services of a cabin crew, if the cabin crew choose to give us a service, it should register as a positive, otherwise a negative, but it probably won't show because it's proportionally such a small negative compared to the punctuality. However, the overall average rating of all of these items is used to generate this rating for that particular passenger, and then using all of the ratings for all of the passengers is used to generate the overall experience of the flight, and that is what is added into your score later on. So let's just have a quick overview of this passenger layout. So we've got the individual passengers all sat in the seats. We've got some empty seats. We are currently let's highlight someone else. You can see different information for them. This person is called Lucas, sitting in 01A business class. He's a 68-year-old male and he's currently listening to music. He's not using the Wi-Fi. He's seated, he's secured, and he's not happy. They all have different stats, all have different information, and they all have different ratings, which is used to generate an overall feel of the flight without everything being the same. Now, what if this person here, in fact, one more thing. If I want to see who's thirsty, I can click on one of the filters. So who's thirsty? This person here. They're all reasonably okay. But if I go to the stats, this person might want a drink. Now, if they wanted a drink, I could request the cabin crew to bring me a drink. Request a drink. As we can see, this cabin crew was the closest at the time, and they're heading towards the passenger, and they'll have a little conversation so you can see exactly what was said with the passenger. Now, they've just been denied service because we're obviously still on the ground. That resulted in a slightly negative rating, but again, it probably didn't show up on the display because again they're so concerned with the actual flight punctuality. But as you can see, the information's there. We can see what's bothering them, and we can see the interaction between the actual cabin crew member and the passenger, so we can get a good idea of what's going on. And that happens automatically. There may well be a few. Well, actually, there won't be. But when the passengers are actually boarding the aircraft, if they pass by a cabin crew member, you can see them saying hello, etc. And that increases the rating of the cabin crew or the personal experience of the individual passenger if the cabin crew are polite to them when they're getting on board. But because I've got this in a mode where I boarded instantly, it kind of skipped the whole process of the passengers walking past the cabin crew, so there's no interactions saying hello. Otherwise, if there was, there would be appearing here. And again, we've got service interactions here. You saw me just ask for a drink. We've got drink, food, snack, alcohol. You can request a pillow, a hot towel, duty free, a request to use the toilet. This can be expanded upon, and it will be in future versions. But again, it's something that you probably won't do. The passengers themselves, they are running in terms of the statistics, so if they do get too thirsty, they will automatically trigger basically the functionality of these buttons to try to ask the cabin crew for a drink, so you don't actually have to worry about it. But again, you can if you like. You can try to artificially inflate a passenger's rating by giving them lots of drinks, but just be aware they will need to use the toilet, and if the toilets aren't open, well, they're not going to be very happy about that either. So that's a quick overview of the aircraft layout. We also have the passenger manifest, so you can actually see a list of all of the passengers. You can see very quickly, I've got the headers here, you can see an instant sort of colour of the overall satisfaction of each passenger. We're not doing too well. You can highlight the passengers from this window as well and see the individual statistics. So we've got 01A. If I click on 01A and ask for a drink, we can see that they're currently requesting service. They're an adult, they're male, they're 68, they weigh 53 kilos. Their name is Lucas Calvo. He's listening to music, he's on board, seated, secured. He had 2 items of carry-on luggage, he had 2 items of checked luggage in the hold, and yeah, the whole lot are there. Some of them don't have hand luggage, some of them don't have hold luggage. The weight, by the way, if you use SimBrief, the weight is distributed between all of the passengers based on what comes from SimBrief. So these values should be fairly accurate. Not that it really matters at the moment, except for it affects the baggage loading time when the ground crew are busy loading the aircraft. But again, I've skipped that for this part of the demo. You'll just have to give it a try yourself when I get this to you. And you can also view both the manifest and the layout if you have the screen real estate. But again, you can resize the window. This is acting funny because I don't have the screen real estate. But as you can see, it displays nicely. It'll fit on a nice landscape monitor if you, a nice portrait monitor if you've got one. Or you can just simply use the view the aircraft layout and they have some screen real estate, or turn it off and keep yourself in the dark. So that is a quick overview of the different windows within the new interface of self-loading cargo. So shall we start the communications part? So self-loading cargo now includes optional voice control for everything, but you can use buttons and they both perform the exact same actions. The only difference is you use your mouse or your mouth. So as you can see, I've clicked on the communication icon. Let me close the toolbar off, and I'm going to make this a little bit bigger so you can see what's going on. So we've got 4 areas of communication. We have a ground crew. We are connected. The button's available. We have an intercom, which is basically used to communicate with the cabin crew via those intercom symbols on the cabin layout. Like I said, if I bring it up again, these things here, that one there, the purser will either have to walk to this intercom or walk to that one before they pick up. If we summon them, they can also summon us, so we have to actually answer if they want to ask a question. And we also have the PA system, which is a broadcast to the cabin that is not in private. It's to the passengers and the cabin crew. So if, for instance, you might want to tell the cabin crew to be seated via the PA system, or if they ask should they be seated via the intercom, you can tell them to do that. And if you tell them to be if you tell the purser to be seated via the intercom, she will then make a broadcast over the PA system to the rest of the cabin crew, because she hasn't they haven't heard that they're supposed to be in the seats. So there's a little bit of intelligence, a little bit of variety in there, so that you don't necessarily have to make the announcements, but you do have to keep the purser informed of what your intentions are and what you expect them to do. So in summary, basically for that scenario, if you don't tell the cabin crew to be seated for takeoff, for instance, over the PA, the intercom will be your way of telling the purser that you expect them to be seated. She will then know that, and then she will make the broadcast over the PA system to tell the rest of her colleagues to take their seats. I'll show you that in a minute, actually. So, excuse me, just had to cough. So yeah, we've got 4 individual channels. We've got a phone. It is implemented, but it doesn't actually do anything. That will be in version 1.7. That will be a satellite phone that you would use to have communications with your company. That's the plan for that. But yeah, we have ground crew, we have intercom, we have PA system. I'm going to show you how to communicate with the ground crew via button. So if I click on ground crew, now because I am using the buttons, this is actually going to use the pilot voice pack instead of my own. If I was to use my own voice, then the sound doesn't play. It actually uses my voice to make the announcement. But because we're in button mode, you will hear the pilot.
Cockpit to ground.
So that's going to come up with a lot of different responses from the ground crew.
Go ahead.
So as you can see, we're at the gate here now, and these are the options that we've got. We can tell them that we're going to start the APU, we can tell them that we want a hotel startup, or we can do a radio check. So if I do radio check,
Radio check, please.
5/5.
Roger.
Simple as that. Now, if I wanted to do that in voice mode, all I need to do is middle click. And I can say cockpit to ground.
Go ahead.
How do you read?
Reading 5/5.
Roger. Simple as that. Now, what you may have noticed is this little window that popped up here. The self-loading cargo voice recognition is currently turned off. Now, this dynamically shows the buttons that are available on the communication system, and it's basically the context of the communications change based on what's happening. So those available buttons were available because we're sat at the gate. If it was the intercom, it would be something different. And you may have seen up here that there were a lot of different phrases. So it basically allows you to use sort of natural language when you're talking to the cabin crew, and any buttons that appear, when you're talking to each individual channel. So any buttons that appear up here, they have certain phrases that are attached to the buttons on here. So basically, you saw me say, how do you read? And that performed the exact same command as when I clicked on radio check. And it's the exact same thing for all of the different ways of communicating. The context of the buttons available changes based on what's happening, and then the phrases change. And basically, you get to read off the screen. So if you wanted to make a public address to the cabin to let them know what's going on, which in fact I'll do that in a second. I'll do the welcome announcement. It is sort of dynamically generated based on the flight, and it's kind of hard to explain. Shall we just do it? Shall we just do it? I'll put it into voice mode. SLC, public address. Now this is a multi-phase announcement I'm about to make. You'll notice that as I progress through it, the contexts change, and oops, sometimes that happens. I have a fan running.
Go ahead.
Disregard, sorry.
Roger.
Yeah, sometimes that happens. I do have a fan running, and this is Windows voice recognition. Oh no, it's happened again. That's embarrassing and annoying.
Go ahead.
Disregard. Sorry.
Roger.
So, yeah, the voice commands do work very well, but if you are in an environment where there is some background noise or whatever, sometimes it does some false positives. I will try to improve that as much as possible, but for the most part it does actually work quite well. But as I was saying, I'm going to do a public address announcement now, and Self-Loading Cargo supports multiple stage voice announcements, and you basically get to make announcements in this public address telling the cabin crew exactly what is going to be going on, telling the cabin crew and passengers exactly what is going to be going on during the flight, during the takeoff. And you'll see that they're color coded. So green buttons represent positive actions, orange ones represent possible negative actions, and red ones are, they potentially have for instance, if there was a large amount of turbulence expected, it's basically representing a possible negativity effect on the passengers. So as you're going through the announcement, you get to make a choice as to how well you keep the passengers informed. However, you are graded on how well you keep the passengers informed on things like punctuality, the weather expectation, etc. And the passengers will obviously react accordingly. So if you tell them it's going to be fine and then there's loads of turbulence as you're climbing, then they're not going to be very happy. But if you did keep them informed, they might be sort of less nervous or less annoyed when they do encounter the bad weather. The only real way to demonstrate this is to try my best to do this announcement and hope this fan doesn't kick me into ground to cockpit mode again. So let's give it a whirl. If not, you can just you can use the buttons, and if any of the voice commands are missed, you can simply click on the button that appears up here to keep the flow going, so you don't have to constantly keep trying to say the same phrase. If it doesn't work, just click on it and it'll advance to the next stage. So let's do it. SLC public address. Good evening from the cockpit, this is your captain speaking. I'd like to welcome you on board this evening's flight to Ibiza. Our cruise altitude this evening will be 29,000 feet with a flight time of around 3 hours 25 minutes. We're not anticipating any delays, so we hope to be underway very shortly. We're cleared to a close by runway this evening, so the cabin crew will be securing the cabin before we push back. If you could get yourself seated and belted as quickly as possible, that would be fantastic. The weather here in Salzburg is looking good, so it should be a nice, comfortable climb up to our cruise level. And once we're airborne, there shouldn't be any issue during our climb. It's a pretty straightforward departure out of the airport, so nothing to worry about there. It looks as though the en route winds are in our favour, so there shouldn't be any issue getting to our destination on time. However, we will keep you informed throughout the flight if that changes. The ground crew have finished loading the aircraft, so if you could get yourself seated and secured, we'll be able to get going straight away. Thank you for flying with Eurowings, and I hope you enjoy the flight. So, that worked pretty well. It picked up everything, and you'll notice that there was some dynamic stuff in there, like the cruising altitude, the flight time, the fact that we were going to Ibiza. It thinks we're in Salzburg, but that's because I've actually set up at Newcastle, because my flight plan. Oh no. Well, that was lucky. My flight plan that I've got loaded was actually a Salzburg to Ibiza flight plan, but I've actually loaded up at Newcastle. And the reason that I've loaded up in Newcastle is just basically because we've got a short taxiway. And you may have noticed throughout the course of that announcement, I actually said that the cabin crew. I said that the taxi was going to be quite short, that we were cleared to a nearby runway. So basically what that means is the cabin crew overheard that part of the announcement, and they will start the safety announcement a little bit earlier. They may start it in a couple of minutes, or they may start when we push back, rather than waiting for us actually pushing back and then doing it during the taxiway, because they might actually run out of time before they finish the safety announcement and walking around the cabin to secure it. So now that we've told them that we expect to be on a short taxi and the runways nearby, they will take steps to actually get the safety stuff done and get the cabin secured, so we can take off. Quickly. So yeah, now you've seen a multi phase announcement, and there are quite a few of them, like the cruise announcement, the approach announcements, etc., like that, and also scenarios such as when you have an engine out, or if you have an aborted takeoff. But there's more on that in the manual, but that's basically how it works. Now if I wanted to make, if I wanted the cabin crew to come to me, all I need to do, we'll do it via button first. I can bring up in fact let's bring up the layout so you can see it actually happening. So we'll highlight the purser. He's over here at the moment. So if I bring the intercom up, you can see she's been summoned back to it, and she's choosing the nearest one. It's now ringing in the back, and there'll be some questions available for her.
Hi.
How are things going?
We're ready to go. We'll be securing the passengers once we start to taxi.
Not a problem.
Simple as that. So now she's left the intercom. It's a case of getting us going. I do want to show you one more thing though, because self-loading cargo includes different voice packs for the cabin crew. If I go to as you can see, the settings, instead of putting it in the manual because it's in quite a state of flux, I've attempted to sort of document what each setting does, and there are quite a few. But if I go to sounds and the cabin crew voices and the voice pack, you can see I've got different ones. So if I choose French and bring her back.
Salut, capitaine.
She's now in French. How's it going?
How are things in the back?
Nous sommes tous prêts ici. Une fois que nous commencerons à rouler, nous commencerons à sécuriser la cabine pour le décollage.
No problem.
So you can have a French cabin crew. Now, I have no idea if that includes swearing because I use Google Translate to do the files. So I apologise if it does. I hope it doesn't. I kind of trust Google, but yeah, you can create your own voice packs for the cabin crew if you wish anyway. But it's a good starting point, and what's the word? The eagle-eyed ones of you may have noticed something else as well. Now, you remember that I told you that the announcements were multi-part. Well, the same thing happens to the cabin crew. So, although the cabin crew will talk to me in sort of French or English or whatever, whichever the primary voice pack is set to, when they're talking to the passengers, the announcements that they make to the passengers themselves, they can also be split up. So, say for instance, if drinks were being served, they would make an announcement saying, "Ladies and gentlemen, we're about to serve drinks." Between ladies and gentlemen and we're about to serve drinks, they would actually say "ladies and gentlemen" in a second language if you choose it. So if I go to settings and say sounds, cabin crew, I can actually choose a secondary language voice pack. So I could have default, I could have an American language with a French secondary one. So now my cabin crew are set up to speak in American primarily, and they will also address the passengers in French, which is quite nice. In fact, shall I do this? You won't have this on yours, but I can create an event. I can say this may not work, but bear with me. I just need to find one of the announcements that might work. Let's see if this one works. Dim the cabin lights for takeoff. So she's heading to the intercom. Let's see if she makes the broadcast to the passengers. Now it should be in American and French. If it works. It might not, because I'm not in the air.
Ladies and gentlemen, because this is a nighttime flight, for safety purposes, I have dimmed the cabin lights for takeoff. This is a completely normal procedure, and they will be turned back on once we've completed our departure. Thank you. Mesdames et messieurs, comme il s'agit d'un vol de nuit, pour des raisons de sécurité...
There you go, she's making the French announcement.
...pour le décollage. C'est une procédure tout à fait normale et ils seront réactivés une fois que nous aurons terminé notre départ. Merci.
There we go. So that announcement was made. Now, if you hear that happening in flight and you're not sure what they're actually saying, you can actually bring up the narration window and you can see exactly what's been said throughout the course of the flight. So you can see here, she said, "Ladies and gentlemen, because this is a nighttime flight, for safety purposes, I have dimmed the cabin lights." Blah blah blah. And then she said the French equivalent. So this is obviously the latest dialogue first, and yeah. It's a narration of all the different things. There should be some with the ground crew in here as well. Well, there isn't, but let's add one. Let's call the ground crew.
Cockpit to ground.
Go ahead.
How do you read?
5/5.
Roger.
Awesome. So again, that's available whether you use the buttons or voice. You can also put it in automated mode. If I do that now, and then choose the ground crew,
Cockpit to ground.
it's kind of semi-automatic because I still have to choose an option to do. But you'll see that in a second.
Go ahead.
Radio check, please.
5/5.
Roger.
So you can see, because it's automated, I didn't actually have to click on Roger. It automatically replied because that was the option available. So it's kind of a semi-automated mode. If you want self-loading cargo to run in automatic mode, you just stick it in that mode, and every time it detects something should be being said, it will automatically do the dialogue for you. So it can run completely standoff. You don't have to do any interaction, any of the voice stuff. If you don't want to, you can just have it running, and self-loading cargo will detect the phase of the flight. It'll make the announcements for you. But if you want to do it yourself to create the immersion, then you can. And just to demonstrate that I can actually talk to the cabin crew via voice, I will put it into voice mode. And actually, before I do that, you can actually map these buttons to buttons on your keyboard or your what are they called, Elgato Stream Deck buttons, just by using the shortcut key. So if I wanted to do a PA announcement, I could just press the button on my keyboard and it's brought up automatically, but there's no commands available. But if I did want to bring the intercom up, I can select that as well on my keyboard, and again it's bringing the cursor to the intercom and she's going to ask us what's up. I'm going to put it into voice mode.
Hi, Captain.
How are things in the back?
We're already here. Once we start to taxi, we'll get started securing the cabin for takeoff.
Thanks a lot. So as you can see, she was in American mode there. Now because I am not American, and we are not in America, I am going to put her back into English default, and I'll turn the French accent off. So I think it's about time that we did a little bit of a pushback here. Now, self-loading cargo, you manage the pushback by communicating with the ground crew. Now, if you remember, based on the oh god, we're very late. They're waiting for the beacon light to switch on. As soon as we set the beacon light on, the ground crew are actually going to contact us and say, if you're ready, let us know and we'll get you going for pushback. So what I'm going to do is, first off, I'm going to check that I've got the APU running, and I'm going to disconnect from ground power. And I'm going to remove the GPU and I'm going to remove the chocks so that pushback actually works. Now, you can control pushback via the EFB, or using these buttons here, or the equivalent on the aircraft you're using, or you can use the FSU IPC pushback, which I'm going to use now, and that allows you to use voice commands to tell the cabin crew where you want to be put. And you also have to announce the startup of your engines during pushback as well. And the easiest way to do this is to just get cracking. So let's do it. I'm going to put it into voice mode, and then I'm going to turn the beacon light on. Now, do I have my lights on in here? Yes, I do. So I'm going to put it into voice mode.
Ground to copy.
Go ahead.
Call me when you require pushback.
Actually, we're all set to go now. Feel free to get connected.
Roger. Ground stop connecting.
Roger. Now you might notice that the cabin crew have started doing the safety announcement, and this is a digital announcement.
Ladies and gentlemen, we now ask for your attention while we take...
That's a different cabin crew voice. It's not the cabin crew, it's a recorded announcement. You know, like the EasyJet ones? So you can choose in settings whether you want the cabin crew to make a dynamic announcement using the normal voices, or play pre-recorded airline announcements, like for instance EasyJet or Emirates or something.
More lighting will guide
Ground to copy.
Oops.
Please be aware that your nearest exit
Go ahead.
may be behind you. In an emergency,
Go ahead.
leave all cabin baggage on board. Your seatbelt is fastened, adjusted, and released as shown.
Stop is connected. Parking brakes when ready to pushback.
Keep it fastened at all times.
Parking brake is off. We're ready to go.
Masks will drop from above you.
Roger. Stop is attached. Steering wheel inserted. Stand by while we start pushback.
Hold in place with a strap and pull on each side to adjust.
So the pushback's starting,
Mask before helping others.
as you can see,
If we land on water,
and then the buttons will become available.
put it over your head. Pass the tapes around your waist.
Safety announcement's still going on.
To adjust. Do not inflate it inside the aircraft. When outside, inflate by pulling the toggle. If it fails to inflate or needs topping up, blow into the tube. There is a light and whistle for attracting attention. We also carry flotation aids for children. Your tray table must now be stowed.
There we go.
Window blinds open and seatbelt fastened.
Okay, Captain, very clear of the stand and you're free to start engine.
Starting number 1.
Roger.
nose left.
Cabin crew, please arm doors and cross-check.
Starting number 2.
Roger.
Stop here, please.
Roger. Please set your parking brake.
Parking brake is set.
Roger. Stand by, please keep your parking brake on while the monitor engine startup and disconnect the towarzysz.
Roger. Shush.
Okay, Captain, looks like a good start up on all engines and stop is disconnected. Not really, so you're good to go. Bell get out, bells disconnected now, so have a safe flight. Look out for the pin on the right and bell, see you next time.
Thanks very much for your help, pin on the right, and we'll see you again soon. So, the ground crew are now disconnecting, so they no longer are available on here. The cabin crew made the announcement to arm all of the doors, so you can see they're green. They are currently securing the cabin. Oops, that's the phone. They're currently securing the cabin, as you can see, they're walking around. This person's nearly finished. Now what's going to happen is the cabin crew are actually going to come to the intercom to tell us that the cabin's secured. You can turn that off. They would just ding, like ding dong, if you wanted a sterile cockpit. But right now she's going to come and tell us that the cabin is secured. Answer intercom.
Hi, Captain. Everyone's seated and secured for takeoff.
Thanks a lot.
Let me know when we're ready to take off and I'll get the crew seated and secured.
I will, no problem. So you'll notice that on the, I'm going to turn that off in case it triggers. You'll notice that on those options that there was an option to say, take your seats now, we're almost ready. Now, I told her I will, which basically sent her away. But now I've got to remember to make the announcement to tell the cabin crew to be seated, because at the moment they're still walking around dealing with the passengers. Now you might want that because obviously it might be a long taxi, and if passengers have any issues, then you might want them to be attended to by the cabin crew. But if you were to tell the cabin crew to take their seats now, sort of there and then at that announcement, then the cabin crew would be told to take their seats. They would go and get seated ready for takeoff, because they would assume that we're going to be taking off quite quickly, and any requests from the passengers coming through would be ignored, basically, because your authority overrides everything else. You've told the cabin crew to be seated. But as it stands, we are in a position where they are free to still be moving around the cabin, but that means that we need to tell them via the PA system to take their seats, and that means that the cabin crew who answers the intercom will then tell the rest of the cabin crew to take their seats, because no, sorry, I got that mixed up. Because we're going to make a PA announcement, they will all take their seats when I make the announcement. But if I had told her by the intercom just then the crew would have been told to be seated by the purser. Sorry, it's very late. What time is it? 12:15. Let's get to the runway and I'll show you what I mean. So I'm going to put my flaps down. I'm going to put my auto brake on, even though we are not taking off, because as you can see I don't have a map or anything like that, and I'll get shouted at by this Airbus, this beautiful Airbus. And let's go. Let's brakes off. Let's get to the runway. We'll probably stick our taxi lights on. We are being graded on this stuff, remember? Now remember, if I want to get away quickly here, I have to make the announcement quite quickly, because they're going to make another announcement, and I'll pull up the narration window so you can see what's been said. There's a few things in there, ground disconnected from the aircraft, etc. So this is all the dialogue between the pilot and the ground crew that we just had, and obviously the cabin crew as well. So again, I could use the buttons if I wanted to, or I could flick to voice mode. Say SLC public address. SLC public address. Cabin crew, please take seats for takeoff. So they're all assigned to the galley. They're making their way to the seats. Purser's heading to the intercom because she's going to tell the passengers it's dark. There we go.
Ladies and gentlemen, because this is a nighttime flight, for safety purposes, I have dimmed the cabin lights for takeoff. This is a completely normal procedure. They will be turned back on once we completed our departure. Thank you.
And what she'll also have done is turn the Wi-Fi off, or maybe she's about to do that. Or maybe there's still a bug. Has she taken seats? Let's put takeoff lights on. Oops. That should have got suspended. Yeah, she hasn't suspended the Wi-Fi. She's fired. I'll try and sort that before it gets released. A minor issue in a major operation. So, I really hope you like what you've seen. I have spent a long time working on this, and you've spent a long time waiting, as I'm sure you're aware. But I have been hard at work on this, and it works really well for the most part. Excuse me, had to cough again. Got a bit of a dry throat with all this talking. But I'm very much hoping that you like what you're seeing, and in fact, shall we just take off and kill everyone? And make them scream, maybe. But thank you very much for watching. I am gonna release this in approximately a week. Let's say a week's time. Everything works, as you can see. There's been no major fails apart from the intercom that I've just called because I've left the voice on. But again, it gives us an opportunity.
Hi.
How's it going?
Not so good, actually. A lot of the passengers are extremely anxious.
Oh, sorry about that. Everything seems to be under control now, though.
I'd better go and see if I can help to calm them down. Give me a call if you need anything else.
No problem. So that was an unexpected bit of dialogue. Oops. But yeah, apparently the passengers are extremely anxious. Not as anxious as they're about to be, but let's see. So she's taking her seat again, ready for takeoff, because the obviously the command was for them to take the seats. If I wanted to get them out of the seats, actually I can do. I'll use my keyboard for this. Oh, wrong button. Wrong button, wrong button. That's my bad. Now she's got to walk all the way there.
Hi, Captain.
Sorry, I've completely forgotten what it was I wanted.
No problem.
I'm sure she's not thinking that. She's probably thinking, why does he keep making me come to the phone? Public address system, yes. So keyboard. Oh, we're in takeoff mode, so the context is unavailable. But basically, if you're during taxi, you can have the ability to say cabin crew resume duties, and that basically lets them get out of the seats, and then you can say cabin crew please be seated. In fact, that might become available if I turn the landing lights off and puts it back into taxi mode. Maybe. Yeah, there we are. So if I put it into voice mode. Cabin crew, you're free to move around the cabin. So now they'll be walking around. No idea why she's gone to the intercom, or maybe to do with the lights. Yeah, managing cabin lights. But yeah, if I then do another announcement. Cabin crew, please be seated. Well, that didn't work, but let's do a different one. Cabin crew, seat positions please. That didn't work either. Cabin crew, please take your seats. No idea why that didn't work. Or maybe... Oh, I'm not sure. You get the gist of it anyway. So yeah, they're all assigned again. They're ready to go. And we're currently in taxi mode because we don't have our taxi lights turned on. Now we're in takeoff mode. And now we're going to make them cry. So, thank you for watching. I will get this to you. And hopefully you can have some happy passengers and happy cabin crew and some good ratings. Thank you for watching. Thank you honestly so much for your patience. I am acutely aware that you've been waiting a while for this, but I have worked hard on it. And as I say, I hope you like what you've seen. I'll get it to you as soon as I can. They don't like that, do they? Alright. Thanks for watching. Catch you in the next one.